Everyone, welcome back to the studio. We're going to continue talking a little bit about the industry as a whole. I am joined here by my colleague Xabier, who is actually the expert behind our global market research report, which you can see here as well, and he has with him, so we have a few copies. It is one of our most valued service because it is a comprehensive analysis on the entire industry. And it's a very, very complicated project because we get insight from the ground up on regional, local, and global level. So tell us a little bit about maybe first, how do we do this? How do you get to get all of this put together in this very interesting book?
Exactly. Well, so as you know, ESOMAR works very closely with all the local and national associations. We have representatives in many countries as well, and they are actually instrumental for us in order to gain or to gather data on their markets. What we do is we create a questionnaire, a survey. We send it out, and countries they gather their insights, and they send them to us. So then we can basically understand how each market is shaped. So it's not only what the value of the market is, but also how it's like all the breakdowns, which industries are spending on market research, which types of studies are being performed. There's quite a lot that is packed in this little book. So yeah, that's a little bit the process.
And you work in cooperation with a lot of local partners, I think associations and companies, so it is really done with people from the countries themselves, from the regions themselves directly.
That's correct. So it's really important to count with not only with a number, but also with a story behind. So the good thing is that local associations, representatives, they are our eyes on those countries and our understanding. It's not actually a number as such won't tell us much. What we need to understand is what brings us to that number, what's behind, what is the trend, what can we expect in the future, and that is the value. And that actually is what, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that is a little bit what the first chapter unpacks. It explains the numbers, explains the story behind.
So let's then talk about that story. As we have discussed, we have looked. You look at the situation in the entire industry, segmented and as a whole, on local, regional, and global level. What is going on in the world of market research across the last year?
Well, so what we would have seen last year seemed to be a year of. It was a moderate year. Growth was quite stable. In the global growth of the industry was a positive 1%, which is good. When we look at the industry as a whole, we see that the value of the industry right now sits a little bit above 76 billion, which is about 1.3 billion more than last year. It's quite sizable now. Of course, every region has its own story behind. So we should say this 1% is actually the growth, this growth is a result of two main forces, which are the biggest players. One is the US, which represents about 44, if I'm not mistaken, about 44% of total turnover. And the other major force is, the Europe, or in this case, the EU, the 15 core countries of the European Union. In this case, the US is doing quite good. It showed a positive growth of about 1.7%, 1.6%, which is quite nice, a very, very welcome growth. On the other hand, the EU 15, the 15 countries, didn't behave that spectacularly. They had a negative growth of 0.4%. Exactly, and that moderates the result for the global industry to 1%.
So an industry that's constantly changing, growing a little bit slower, growing quite fast, a very big industry as a whole, even though I think it is a bit of an unknown thing, maybe within other industries and fields, but still a very, very impressive market share, I would say. So an industry in transition, an industry that is also currently battling with the kind of implementation of technology, with other industry kind of combining forces with new innovation and kind of bringing that in. So in that respect, how does the data in the GMR kind of touch upon this a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is that we tend to think of this, what we would call the extended market. What is the insights? We tend to think of it as as the little kid of market research, or maybe as the new part of the industry. However, it's not that new, and it's definitely sizable. In the last 3 years, the new insights, as we would refer to them, this industry has grown from a share of about 30. Let me think about this. 39% in global turnover. That was in 2014. 2017 is already 46%. That's quite an increase, and in fact, it is growing faster than the so-called traditional sector. So the new insights is growing at about 5%, which means that it's gobbling up market share.
So it's interesting to see how the two are kind of moving together, parallel, but at the same time at a slightly different pace.
Absolutely. So the reality is this second half of the industry is important, and we should understand it's not going anywhere. It is important to understand that the traditional sector should embrace that these new ways of getting insights are very important, and should understand that they should play along. They are a new or other tools to get there.
And finally, how are the big companies and the traditional players faring with that?
Yeah, so what we have seen, there is a section in the report in which we touch on the top 10 world players. That chapter is divided into like 2 sub-chapters. One is the movements within the top 10, and there is the second sub-chapter, which I think is quite interesting, which puts in perspective what is what is their role in the world context, right? So when you look at the ranking itself, you will see that there are not major movements. Companies are growing. In fact, they are growing faster than the world industry. However, you got to look underneath. What is pushing that growth? And what we have seen is that in most cases, at least in the most striking cases, this growth is being driven by mergers and acquisitions. What does that mean? You have small companies which are very tech-oriented, which are very specialized, and they have a know-how which is very limited, but they count with the flexibility to offer tailor-made solutions to their clients. They are very quick, very innovative, and sometimes it happens that larger players, they may not be able to adapt as quickly, to move as fast. In order to survive, they need to, what they end up doing is they end up acquiring these companies, trying to learn from them, trying to integrate those new methods in-house. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. This is incredibly, I think very interesting. And this is only scratching the surface of this book. So have a look. If you're a member, you can access this for free. And if you're not a member, you can purchase this at a very low price, or just become a member. I think that's the best thing.
We would encourage everyone to become a member.
Absolutely. I think that will be, you'll get this and a lot more. So thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you for all of this very informative information.